All right, so I'll be talking about tips to building your PayPal apps. This is going to be pretty code intensive. It's going to be, so if you're not a developer or you're not interested in looking at code, this would probably be the wrong place to be. So pretty much the agenda is going to be a little bit about Outright. It's going to be talking about our PayPal embedded app, or PayPal app. It'll be going through the code that we wrote, the specific like open social code that put our app inside of PayPal, and it's all open sourced. And then I'm going to go through a couple like tips that we found when developing the app. A couple interesting reference projects if you are looking for like open source HTML gadgets or URL gadgets that you're interested in looking at, and then just some thanks to people who helped us. So first, a little bit about me. My name is Ben Curren. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a coder. I've been coding for about 13 years. Coded in all sorts of different languages, from C, C++ to Ruby to Java. Most recently, I program mostly in Ruby and JavaScript, actually. Current company I'm at is called Outright.com. I'm one of the founders. And we actually did a similar eBay app, and we won the eBay Star Developer Award for that. That was last year. And for fun, I do, love my family, scuba, hang gliding at one point. So a little bit about Outright. We were founded in November 2008. It was founded by me and Kevin. We're currently at 14 employees, have some great investors. Okay, so let's just go right into it and start demoing the app. So, let's see. It looks fine on my computer. Okay, so let's say there's a guy out there named Fred the Freelancer, and he goes and he's a coder. He's a really smart coder, so he uses PayPal for his payment platform. So he gets lots of payments coming through PayPal. He tends to not know like if his company's if it's making lots of money, who his best customers are. So he would be able to come into PayPal and he can say, okay, let's look at. Hey. Hold on, let me get a different account. This one's already set up. Okay, so he would come into PayPal, and he'll see the apps bar at the bottom. Man, I can't get to it. The screen resolution. Do you guys know a way around this? Hold on. All right, there we go. So he could go and visit the app gallery. We'll go through and he'll see Outright. So go ahead and click Outright. I should have tried this on the screen resolution. You can add the app. Okay, so right here we're actually asking for the permissions to access his account. So he clicks agree. It'll pretty much immediately registers him for our application, and then we require a little bit of configuration before we can get started. So you can say like, click continue. Cool. So see what happens is immediately we create an Outright.com account for them. We then grab their PayPal. We actually grab the current PayPal account, and we start bringing in all of their transactions into Outright. And then we'll tell them, we'll pretty much analyze their data and tell them what their profit and loss is over each given month. So you can see this month, for example, I'm in the red, $22.94. So in general, this is like how the PayPal embedded app works, and you'll see this is all from within PayPal. And you'll be able to go to my account screen here, and so this here is called the full page view. Then you can actually go in to my apps, click on Outright, and you can kind of see your profit and loss. Like this is the widget view, and it's your profit and loss over the last 6 months. Ugh, the screen resolution is horrible. Okay. So that's kind of like how our app works. And so what I was going to actually do is go through the code that we built to make this work. So I'm not going to go through the specific Outright.com logic, like how we're using transaction search to pull in the history and then do the profit and loss analysis. However, what I will show is how we actually coded this widget, how we coded the full page app, like the different states you have to handle. And then I have a bunch of open source code that you guys can use to build your own. Okay, any questions so far? I want to make sure you guys kind of understand the big picture before I get started. Cool. Okay, so first, the goal is to make it as seamless as possible for a PayPal customer to come in and set up an Outright account extremely quickly and grab their PayPal account and bring it in right away. So the major use case we have to handle is a PayPal customer that does not have an Outright account yet. Then you have another one where it's a PayPal customer who already has an Outright account, but they haven't linked it to their PayPal account. And that's actually what I just did. I actually already had an Outright account, and I just said, PayPal linked to this Outright account. And then the third case is the PayPal customer is already linked to an Outright account, and that's kind of that last case where you just start seeing the widget view and the full page view. So real quick, this is actually our flow chart of how we handle this, and I'll actually get into the specific models of what each one of these things mean. But pretty much the user kind of goes in and they say they want to subscribe to Outright. We immediately look for we call them an open social user. So we look for this open social user with an open social viewer ID. That viewer ID is like a unique identifier that PayPal gives to their customer when they're connecting to us. So we look in that table. If we find someone in that table and they already have an account, we pretty much just log in that user and just show them the data. We redirect to their dashboard page. So it's just like it's another way to authenticate with Outright. Okay, if we don't find something on that table, we show a setup screen where the user gets to choose if they have an account or if they want to create a new account. So you'll see if they already have an account, if they already have an account, it will take their current user record on Outright and attach it to the open social user to say this viewer ID is this user on Outright.com, and so then that way the next time through here it'll just log in that user and they get to see their data. And if they don't have an account, then what we do is we create a user with an open social viewer ID, and then we also create like the actual Outright user and attach the two together, and then bring in their PayPal account and bring in that data. Is this chart pretty clear? Okay, so let's start looking at a little bit of code to see how this all comes together. So I've kind of made a little bit of assumption that you guys understand open social a bit. If most of you, or maybe I could ask, how familiar are you guys with open social? If you're familiar with open social, like the general concepts, can you maybe raise your hand? Okay, so I'll do a real quick overview of open social. So open social is pretty much you create containers, and PayPal is now an open social container. And what that allows you to do is write to the open social spec and put your application or code snippets inside of PayPal, and they will actually run them for you. There are two types of open social gadgets. You have a URL or you have an HTML. And HTML means that when you give them, there's this manifest file that describes your application. When you give them this file, the file itself contains JavaScript and HTML that then PayPal will execute in their container. Okay, then you have a URL gadget, which what you do is when you give them your manifest file, instead of putting your HTML and JavaScript in that file, you say, actually, just go connect out to this URL, and that URL will serve you up the HTML and JavaScript that you host. So we actually are a URL gadget, and PayPal supports both right now, but I'm pretty sure in the future they're only going to support HTML gadgets. However, most of the code and signature verification code here will be shared between both. So what this is this gadget spec is that manifest file, and I wanted to just kind of show you the details of it so you could see, so you can see what it looks like, what a URL gadget manifest looks like. Cool. So this is our actual real gadget spec. Besides we just switched out the URLs. All of this code, by the way, is on GitHub. Fully open sourced, and you can do what you want with it. So I kind of extracted shared modules out that you guys can use verbatim if you write in Ruby. Otherwise, you can kind of reverse engineer it and port it to PHP or Java. And then I gave sample code, a sample Rails app that actually functions and uses all this code. So this here, you can see the two key areas are these two right here. It's pretty much, this is like telling what permissions we require. And all these two things here are saying is, look, for that widget view, call example.com OpenSocial widget. And for the full page, call OpenSocial full page. Okay. And then pretty much what PayPal, when you send that to PayPal, what's going to happen is when you click, I want to add outright, like we saw earlier, they're going to post to that URL that you provided in your manifest or your gadget spec. And they're going to pass along all this other interesting information and some signatures so you know it's from actual PayPal. So what this here is this is actually like our class diagram of like the key classes and modules that are required to kind of do that branching between creating a new account, getting a user account, and then doing the verification of the signature. I'll go into more details on the verification of the signature, but that is when they post to you, you have to make sure that it's from PayPal, not just some other like hacker. And that's kind of what this guy is here. Hey, there, that guy here. This is the verifier, so it'll actually verify the signature. This guy here, if you guys know Rails or any kind of any other web framework, this is mainly like the controller. So the request comes in here, and you'll see it either called widget or full page view. And then OpenSocial user is that user I told you that links between. This is like so most sites will already have this user model, okay? And what all this is it's saying, hey, this viewer ID, which is that OpenSocial viewer ID. I said before, the unique identifier links to this user. That's all that's saying. So when a request comes in, you get the viewer ID, and you can look up the user, and then that's the user you're going to log in. And if that user doesn't exist, that means you need to have them either attached to an account or create a new account. So first I was going to go through the use case of a PayPal customer doesn't have an outright account. So this is probably the most interesting use case. And it kind of looks like this. So just kind of follow the numbers. So, except there's 2 1s. Okay. X that. Obviously, this one's supposed to be a 2. So a PayPal customer comes in and he gives a full page. Okay, we immediately then go and say, hey, we need to log in from this request. Okay, we go and we say, we need to verify this request is from PayPal, and then we're not doing a replay attack or any of these other types of attacks that hackers can do. Then what we do is we look for the OpenSocial user. Okay? In this case, we're creating it. Like, it doesn't exist. So it's the first time it came in. So we're going to create this OpenSocial user, and it doesn't point to a user. And then what's going to happen is we're going to, am I missing a 5? Look at me. Yeah, so then what's going to happen is we're going to the user is not logged in at this point because it didn't find an attached user. So then we redirect to the setup page. The setup page is... You know what, I'm short on time, so the setup page is where you got to choose between you have an existing company or not, that one page I showed. Cool, so Cool. So let's actually look at the code of that controller. So the method names are similar to that diagram, and I'll just show you the actual code. Oops. Cool. Can you guys read this? I tried to make okay. So here's the OpenSocial controller. This is where the request comes in. And based on those two URLs in your gadget spec, you either choose full page or widget. So our setup always comes through full page. So a request is going to come through full page, and we're going to immediately want to try to log in from OpenSocial request. So let's go ahead and follow that. So first what we do is we verify the request to make sure it's from PayPal. And if it's not, we raise an exception. And then we capture that exception somewhere else and show an error page. Then what you have here is we actually look for that OpenSocial user by the viewer ID. So this is, like I said, the unique identifier. So we're looking for it or creating it. That returns this OpenSocial user. Then what we do is we're going OpenSocial user.user. So we're looking for that attached user to the OpenSocial user. If that doesn't exist, this will return nil. Okay, and if this was assigned a user, then you would be logged in. And then what we do is we just keep track that, hey, this is the current OpenSocial user ID that we're dealing with at this point in time. And then it will come back up here, and logged in will be false, okay, because that user was null. So we're going to redirect to the action setup. Cool. So I'll go through the setup action in a second, but first I kind of glossed over the verify request code. So that's like a key piece of code that you guys can fully just reuse right now. It's kind of a pain to create as well. So it's useful because it's little cryptography kind of stuff. So you have to get like every single value exactly right, and you have no idea why it's not working. So yeah, as I said before, the purpose is to ensure that it's not coming from PayPal, and that it's not been tampered with during transport, and that it's not like a replay attack. Because some people will actually record a request and then like 2 days later try to play the same request back. So it'll actually pass. It'll pass the signature, but it's actually like a hacker trying to do something that they shouldn't be. So you also check timestamps on it. So the key things that you verify are you're verifying the auth signature. This is pretty much PayPal signing it. Then you're verifying that it hasn't been processed already. So this is, you actually, every time you get a request, you actually record that request, you process it, and then make sure you don't process them again. And then you verify the timestamp to make sure that it's recent. And then you verify that they're not like recording in another OpenSocial app and then playing it on yours right here. So you're verifying the OpenSocial app ID matches yours. I gave a link there for more theory on this. This is standard kind of OpenSocial stuff. So this request params here, this is an actual real request that we've received from PayPal. And I gave this to you because it's kind of hard to get this. And this 100%, you can use this to verify signatures. Like this isn't a unit test of ours, and it actually will signature. So the signature will validate. So if you're doing any development in PHP and I would take this, and you know their sandbox cert will actually verify this. And then here, the header. So there's two things that matter. Like when you take these parameters, and then you take this header, and you kind of append them all together in a certain way, and then you do like a signature verification on that string. So it's important to know not only the host it came from, but also the string that came in. And then I know that's hard to read. So here I just took out the key parameters that are being passed in. OpenSocial Viewer ID, that's a unique ID. This PayPal Payer ID, that's the actual internal PayPal Payer ID. OAuth nonce, this is it's a unique key that's sent to each time, and it identifies the request. So you actually record this each time, and you won't respond to that nonce a second time. Then this is my app ID. So this is our app ID. So Outright has a unique app ID. Then you have the OAuth timestamp. This says what time they made the request. And then you have the OAuth signature, which is pretty much PayPal constructs a string, and then they use their private key to generate a signature, which they send over. And then we take the signature and we generate the same string and use their public key to then make sure that it's valid, pretty much. Okay, so let's kind of look through that code real quick. Cool. So this code is 100% reusable. It's also on GitHub. So there's this method called verify request, which you get params. And right here, what we're doing is we're checking so pretty much if we're not in production, we don't check signature verifications. So that, because otherwise it's so that way you can kind of spoof requests in development and on your staging servers. So first what we do is we look for a certificate. So PayPal will give you a production certificate and then a sandbox certificate. And this just changes depending on what environment you're on. All this is really saying is if there isn't a certificate, raise an error if you're in production. Then all we're doing here is we're saying, okay, let's assert that it's a valid signature. Here's the signature. That's a valid timestamp. Here's the timestamp, nonce, and Open Social App ID. So the Open Social signature is probably the most interesting. You go in here and you get your cert. Okay, from the cert you can grab the public key. So this is PayPal's public key. Then there's this this PayPal action controller request, which I'll show you the contents of that in a second. Which this is actually part of an OAuth open source Ruby gem, and then I extended it to create this PayPal one, which takes into account that the header. So I won't get into the details of that. But essentially what this is doing is this is constructing the string that you do your cryptography kind of signature verification on. And then you have your OAuth customer and your OAuth signature, and we are using RSA SHA-1. And then once you kind of construct this stuff, you call sign.verify, and if it's not verified, you raise a verification error. You don't have to understand too much of the details of here. Pretty much this is plug and play code. Just put it in, it will work. The next thing we do is we assert that it's a valid timestamp. So what we do is we look at the timestamp and we say, hey, it's got to be within 5 minutes ago. Then we look at the nonce. And what we do is we actually have a table specifically for OAuth nonces. And every time we get, you'll see here, every time we create a nonce every time we process a request. And then what we do here is we check to see if it's in the database. And if it is in the database, we raise an invalid nonce. And this is because it's a replay attack at this point. The user is actually trying to send the same request twice. And then here, this is just a configuration of our application ID. I'll show you real quick the PayPal action. So this is real simple. Like I said, the plugin, there's this OAuth plugin, and it does most of the heavy lifting here. And PayPal, they have a reverse proxy, so you can't use usually you would use the host name when you build that string. And in this case, since it's behind a reverse proxy, you have to actually use this header x-forwarded host. And so what this here is just, it's pretty much just replacing the host, the normal host that you usually use of HTTP requests, and you're using the x-forwarded host instead. Cool. Let me check time real quick. Okay, so I'll go through the setup action I'll go through a couple of these code snippets at once because we're running short on time. I want to leave room for questions. So once again, so as you remember, before we verified the signature request, the open social user we created, but it wasn't attached to a real user, so they weren't logged in. So we served back the setup page. So now the user's looking at this choice between I have an existing company or a new company. So what we do here is this is the user. So this is pretty much us rendering setup because we're redirecting back to setup. And what we do here is we first find the open social user, which now will find one. Then when they're logged in, it's still false. And then we render that setup action. And then I'll show you all the code at once. And then the next thing is, let's say the user chooses, I want to create a new account. This is what happens. So we post back. So when they create a new account, they type in their company name and they hit create a new account. We're going to post back here, create a new account with a company name. Okay, we're going to once again find the open social user. What we end up doing is we create the user and attach it to that open social user. So now when you go through, logged in is true. And then what we do is redirect to their dashboard page, and that's when they're going to see the page where it shows all like their income and expense. Okay, I'll show you both of those requests at once. Okay, so you'll see we're following this. So we redirected to setup. So we go into setup here. And remember, we set that session variable, so now we can get the OpenSocial user that we're currently working with. We build up a user, okay, and we show that form. The user is then going to fill in that form. They're going to choose create new account and post back. So now here's create new account. User go in, we create a new user based on what the user populated in that form. Then we find the OpenSocial user. We attach the OpenSocial user to that user. Okay, and then we save that user and we log them in. So we just save the user. So now we've created it, and we log them in, and then we redirect to the dashboard. Okay, so they're all set up at this point, or we go back to setup if there's any sort of errors. Okay, so building on top of that, you can see if they chose the other choice. So what if they chose to link to an existing account? So let's see that code. Actually, I'll go through this real quick. So similar to the other one, this time it's going to, instead of choosing create a new account, they're going to say attach to an existing account. So we're going to go through and we link, we're going to find the OpenSocial user once again. This time, to link to a current existing Outright account, you have to actually type in your username and password. Otherwise, you could just attach to any account. So what we do is we actually take that username and password that they entered, and we authenticate with the user. If that's valid, then what we do is we attach to the OpenSocial user, and then once again, they're logged in, and we redirect to the root path. And that's this code here. So here you can see we do the authentication. If the user authenticates, we actually attach the OpenSocial user here, save it, log them in, redirect to the home page. If they didn't authenticate in this case, we just say check your password and try again, and we redirect them back to the setup page. Cool. And this is the very last case, which is okay. So now we're all set up. And we just go in and we see the widget view and the full page view, and it's already attached, and it just pretty much automatically logs them in. And that's this last case here, which is what we saw actually in the beginning. You're just going to go log in from OpenSocial request, which we saw before, except this time it's going to verify in here, and then at this point, OpenSocial.user is going to return an actual user, and that logs them in. And so then when you go back up to the top, when you log in, you just go right to the root path. And the same thing for the widget. If you log in, you go, this is our profit and loss widget that we were showing. Just for the current logged in company, it shows it for them. And if they haven't set up that widget, we actually don't let people set up through it. We just fill it with sample data and then redirect them to the full page app. Cool. All right. So that was all of the code piece. So I kind of wanted to go through a couple things that would probably be helpful if you're going to start building OpenSocial gadgets. So one is I would leverage iGoogle because iGoogle has a lot of really great tools. So to build, so the OpenSocial spec is the same on like iGoogle as in PayPal if you're not using the data specific piece. So what's nice about it is that you have very quick round trip development cycles on iGoogle. So we built up most of our stuff, and then eventually what we did is we took it and then put it into the actual PayPal container. That manifest file, especially if you're writing HTML gadgets, that manifest file tends to change all the time because all of your code is in that manifest file. So what's really key is that you can, with your great developer tools, change the manifest file, save it, and then refresh a page and see the changes. It's very important. Or else what happens is you're going to make a change, you're going to have to FTP to a server, and then from that server you're going to have to serve up that page, and then iGoogle or the container will pull that page because this actually has to be a hosted site. So this file has to be hosted on the internet. So I found this really cool free trick that I thought I would share with you guys. Using Dropbox.com. I'm not sure if you guys know Dropbox, but it's kind of attaches a drive to your computer. You can actually just save your code there and use it just like a local file. But what's really cool is you can go up to Dropbox and in that file you can say this file I want it to be publicly viewable, and you can actually navigate down to it actually serves it on a web web server. So I just took the URL and put it right inside of iGoogle. So then on my desktop, I'm literally just saving the file, and then in iGoogle, it just keeps grabbing the changes. So it was a really like quick, easy way, especially if you're behind a firewall, to to expose your manifest file and to do your development. And then when you're done, you would eventually put it in your code base and on your own servers, but it's really good for development purposes. Here's another interesting one I found, which is once it does go into production, and there's times that what you want to do is, the way it works is when PayPal renders your app, it puts it inside of an iframe. And the problem is that sometimes you want it to point to your local environment instead of your production environment. So rather than like creating a new manifest file and sending it to PayPal and having them put them up on a server for that, what I did is I just did etc host tricks. So if you're a Windows person, you can do. I'm not a Windows person, but I remember this working when I worked on Windows. And then if you're a Mac guy or a Linux guy or Unix guy, etc host. And so pretty much what I did is you just look at the iframe and they're like, oh, okay, the iframe is stage2sc5737.sc4paypal.com. So what I did is I just went in my etc host file and I said, okay, ignore DNS and instead point this to my local host. So what they're doing is they're still serving it up, and the iframe is going to say stage, this long domain here. But what will actually happen is actually pointing to localhost, and so then you can just make your tweaks and do really fast turnaround changes. And then when you're done, you just delete that line and you publish it up to your production server, and it all is good. This is something that we found just working with PayPal, and we tend to always need little permissions. What I would do is think of what permissions you need, and think of what you need now plus a little bit. So we originally were like, oh, we just need transaction search, but then there was a bunch of other APIs that we knew for a fact we were going to need. We were going to want. Well, I won't go through all the details we have, but I would just look through the permissions API and choose what you think you're going to need for the next year. Don't go overboard, but in general, it's a pain to have all your users re-authenticate to add a feature. So you might as well get a reasonable amount. Now, I would maybe think twice if you were starting to get write access, though, because most users all of a sudden a security threshold. But for us, we're doing all reads, so it's really not that big of a deal. Cool. And then lastly, I have just a list of reference projects. This will be posted. I'll post it on my blog. It's also going to be on x.com. So the reason I made them all links is so you can actually link to the real repos. So I would check out some of these guys when you grab the PowerPoint. The first one here is actually all the code I just showed you. All lives in this repo right here. And we have a lot of open source code, so you can check out that outright repo. Cool. And I just wanted to thank a couple people. The PayPal team really worked hard. Shindig is I don't know if you guys know Shindig, but that's the reference implementation of OpenSocial. And pretty much PayPal builds on top of Shindig, eBay built on top of Shindig, Google. So Shindig's an awesome project, and if you ever want to be an OpenSocial container yourself, I would check out Shindig. And then I don't want to take all the credit because Bernd Ustorf, our senior developer, I figured I'd embarrass him by putting his picture up here. He did most of the hard work of getting this done, and he's awesome. Cool. So that's it. Here's more information about, here's the Outright repo, more about me. Check out developers@outright.com. Here's my information. Feel free to email me directly. And, oh yeah, of course, we're hiring. All right. Any questions? Yeah.
Hold on, I got a mic coming.
Oh, cool.
Not exactly familiar with everything that you're discussing, but I noticed in your manifest file you referenced you referenced the two URLs. You're having full page, for instance, and then later on in your flowcharts you mentioned full page. But you also referenced some other methods that weren't in the manifest. So I was wondering if you can kind of explain the link there. For instance, approaching, I think it was either the second or third pathway that you're describing. You entered in at point 1 using a request that wasn't in the manifest. So I wasn't sure exactly how that request would hit the hit your application.
Cool. Yeah. So that makes sense. So I was kind of trying to emulate. It's a user session. So what's happening is the user would click on. Actually, I wonder if the easiest way is I could just show you. I have an account real quick that I could probably just show this on. Okay. Okay, so I'll kind of show you. You can actually see all the URLs. Like, I'll show you exactly what I was talking about. Oh man, is this already attached? Okay, good. Okay, so what happened is when you first saw the bar, the thing spinning, it's actually going to full page. Okay, what full page does is it's checking to see if there's an open social user, creates it if it doesn't exist, and it checks if there's a user. If there's not a user, it redirects to this page. So this is actually the page called setup. And so now when the user actually types in something here, is how the user gets to that second action. Okay. Like when you hit submit here, it's then going to create account, for example. And if you clicked here, it's then going to link to an existing account.
And that was number one? That was number one in your presentation?
Yeah, so the first one was showing it go to full page and then redirecting to setup. Setup renders this page right here. So a user never, I guess maybe it's a little confusing that I put an actor pointing to setup, because what happens is the first full page redirects to setup. Like it sends a 301 back, and then the browser will automatically then point to setup page. So the second request is actually going to the setup page. But the user doesn't like directly initiate it, the server initiates it.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Okay. So maybe I should really, it's really that second action was not like a person doing it, it was the server redirecting there.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Yep.
You briefly mentioned that open social can be URL and HTML, and PayPal might move away from the URL gadgets to HTML. So currently you're on a URL base, so that means you're going to be rewriting your app in order to accommodate for that? Or are they going to do backwards compatibility for grandfathering and existing implementations?
So for us, so the reason we chose URL and not HTML is because we're embedded inside of eBay already, and we use URL. So for us, a lot of this infrastructure already existed. It's just like kind of tweaking it for PayPal. So it's not like we built something from scratch. Also, our whole site and most of our work is done on the core outright.com site, and all this is like it's kind of like a little trick to authenticate people and to get access to PayPal account very quickly. So for us to like go from URL to HTML that would be work, but we didn't put much work in for the URL based one in the first place. I don't know if that makes sense. We're just delaying the pain.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Thank you.